Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Editorial Discussion. This is Preeti Sagar, and I have taken up. I have taken up all such important editorials which had been published in the past week, and these were having some importance for the examination. So let's start our discussion. So first article of the day, that is about money changer. India needs to move forward on introducing an official digital currency. So this is regarding you can say legal tender to be provided or should be provided to a digital currency, or you can say cryptocurrency. So this article is related to the importance of cryptocurrency. The world is moving towards cryptocurrencies or digital currencies. So India needs to officially announce or introduce its own digital currency, and its regulation should be under the RBI, as it is regulating all such other norms or legal tenders. So context of this article is that in contrast to India's continued ambiguity over the legality of the cryptocurrencies, its stance on introducing an official digital currency has been reassuringly clear and consistent over the time. So basically, India had been India's ambiguity over the cryptocurrency or the legal tender to be provided to the cryptocurrency or its legality towards digital currency. So India needs to officially introduce digital currency, and it will reassure clear and consistent over the time. So official digital currency bill, for example, so for years after an interministerial committee recommended that India launch fiat money in digital form, Reserve Bank of India has indicated that pilot projects to figure out its viability are likely to be launched soon. So it has been sent by an interministerial committee that has recommended to launch a fiat money in the digital form. So fiat currency would be introduced as per the recommendation of the interministerial committee. So fiat money, basically it is what money is in the use. Okay, so digital form money can be used. So Reserve Bank of India has indicated that it will come up with the pilot project, and it will figure out the viability to launch digital currency very soon. In a speech some days ago, T. Ravi Shankar, who is Deputy Governor of RBI, has said that RBI is currently working towards a phased implementation strategy, and it is examining use cases which could be implemented with little or no disruptions. So basically, it is not only about introduction, and the work has already been done, already been started by RBI, as it has been indicated by Deputy RBI Governor. So clarity is welcome, given that the much awaited cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021 is yet to be introduced. As monsoon session is going on, so we will see whether it will introduce or not. So they are risks to be considered as well, not the least of which will those emerging from the cyber attacks. So basically, apart from cyber attacks, there are other risks as well, which need to be considered before moving on to the introduction of digital currency. What is more, many laws need to be amended to make digital rupee a reality. So before digital rupee come onto the floor, before this, what is required? The required step is amendment. Lots of amendments in the laws regarding digital currency use. So that has to be done before introduction of digital currency. So while India might have done exceedingly well in digital payments in recent years, Deputy Governor has said they have grown at a compounded annual growth rate of 55% over the last 5 years. Digital rupee will be something else altogether. So here, basically, it has he has trying to show its importance, or digital currency's importance. So the compound annual growth, it is increasing by compound annual growth of 55%. So all these challenges, it would seem that the answer to Mr. Ravi Shankar's speech title, that was Central Bank Digital Currency, is this the future of money? That can be said, yes, it is, or it is not. So, so before moving on to this, so clarity on the bill, that is welcome. Whether it is, it means that it is in the upcoming session or in the ongoing session, it will be introduced. So in recent past, significant rise of private cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ether, that has spooked central banks throughout the world and pushed the case for official digital currencies. And Mr. Ravi Shankar has cited that a 2021 BIS survey of central bank which found that 86% were actively researching the potential for such currencies. It means 86% people, they are now researching on the potential of digital currencies, and 60% were experimenting with the technology, and 14% were deploying pilot projects. So these are what these are. This has been found out as per the BIS survey conducted by Central Bank. So China, that already engaged in the pilot project for the digital RMB, that is their own digital currency, and they are planning for a major rollout very soon in their country. And there has been little doubt that therefore India needs a digital rupee as well. So basically, see, look at the importance of digital currency as world. Most of the emerging economies or developed worlds or developed countries, they are also moving on to the usage of digital currencies. We know that digital currency has not do not have legal tender, but look out its its importance. If India will be behind those countries who is already using digital currency, and India is not using digital currency at that point of time, then what will be the situation? India, most of the development we have seen that India had conducted it later on as compared to other countries or contemporary world. Okay, so because of this, what happened? India somewhere it is well behind. Okay, so this is the time when world is moving towards digital currency. So India should also come forward. India should also accept it. Whatever loopholes are there in the usage of digital currencies, or whatever risk and concerns are involved with the use of digital currency, that need to be sorted. That need to be worked upon. And this is the time, this is the chance when India should move forward to accept or to give digital currency a legal tender, or it should be rolled out in the market. What would be the what would be the significance of it? Significance would be that most of the people, whether it is Indian or outside, or you can say foreigners, they are already involved in the business of using digital currency or holding digital currency or cryptocurrencies, bitcoins, Ether, anyone. So we know that there are some people who is having money, they are investing in cryptocurrencies or digital currencies. So it means it is in the usage. But as a country, India is not taking advantage of it. It means for example, if we have money, we deposit it in the bank. So what government do? Basically, government earns profit on those deposits which people have in the banks, and a deposit comes. So if digital currency would have legal tender, and people who is holding digital currencies in India, who would hold digital currency in India, or they are holding outside India, so India is not able to take that advantage. Another thing is that there is capability that if India will roll out digital currency, then it will give chance, or it will provide chance to move on the par as Western world are moving. Okay, in terms of digital currency. Another thing is that its storage, its holding currency, it needs technology. It needs technological minds to store it. Okay, if there is cloud storage, then obviously to maintain cloud storage or to keep eye on the cloud storage, technology is required. For technology, there is technical minds are required. So if India will roll out digital currencies, then it will provide another employment generations. Okay, employment will be generated for those people who are technically sound minded, who are involved, who have who can utilize their technological skills, and it will provide job opportunities. Various fields will be open for the people. Profit will be earned, because many people in the country, in the world, they are very much interested in digital currencies these days, because this is the trend, this is the current trend. So if India will be far behind, then what will happen? It will fell behind as compared to other contemporary world. Okay, so China, as it has been mentioned, that China has already made its plan to roll out digital currency very soon. It is already engaged in the pilot project. But India, what India is doing, India is still thinking on to rolling out of pilot project. And roll out of digital currency, it means it will take time to come. So still we are very late as compared to China, our next neighbor. So there has been little doubt. Therefore, India needs a digital rupee. And the important questions are about the details and the timeline when it is going to be circulated. So there are crucial decisions to be made about the design of the currency, and with regard to how it will be used, degree of anonymity it will have, kind of technology that is to be used, and so on. So these things are there what India need to sort out, what India need to work upon. What are those design of the currency? If India will have its own digital currency, then similarly, if we have 500 notes, 100 notes, 50 rupees notes, what's say 2000 notes. So every note or currency is having its own design, having its own technology. So if digital currency would be there, then its design need to be need to be made, or need to have, okay. Then how it will be issued, who will hold it, degree of anonymity it will having, kind of technology what India is going to use. So it is possible that question of the degree of anonymity especially will be a quite challenging one. While official digital currencies can borrow the underlying technology feature of private cryptocurrencies, they significantly differ from the latter in their philosophy and goals. So to be considered, there are possible impacts of the introduction of an official digital currency on the people, monetary policy, as well as banking system. So it will impact people mind, it will impact people of the country, it will impact our monetary policy, it will impact our banking system, as I was saying. So there are some risks to be considered as well, not the least of which will be those emerging from the cyber attacks. What is more, many laws that need to be amended to make digital rupee a reality. So while India might have done exceedingly well in the digital payments in recent years, the Deputy Governor has said that they have grown at a compounded annual growth rate of 55% over the last 5 years. Digital rupee will be something else together. Basically, what happened during COVID-19 time and before this, during demonetization, India emphasized upon the use of digital form of transactions. So here he's saying, the Deputy Governor is saying that this digital payment has grown at the compounded annual growth rate of 55% in those 5 years. So digital rupee or usage of digital currency will something else altogether with the usage of digital payments. So with all such challenges, it had to be seen that answer to Mr. Ravi Shankar's speech titled Central Bank Digital Currency is future. Is this the future of money? Is a yes. It means his the title of the speech that was Central Bank Digital Currency, is this the future of money? So yes, it is the future of money. It is the future of India. Usage of digital currency or implementation of digital currency and rolling out of digital currency. As I've said, it is going to be help holistically. Technological development would be taking place, employment generation would be taking place. We will comparatively work on the power of the Western world or those countries who are using it. We can have, for example, it has mentioned that it will impact people, it will impact monetary policy, it will impact banking system as well. So lots of challenges are there, but lots of positives and advantages are also involved in the circulation of digital currency or implementation of digital currency. So this is all about this article. I hope it is clear now. Now, next article, that is about lessons from India's food security response. Government measures to tackle the food crisis during the COVID-19 pandemic were effective. Context of this article, basically, this is about India's food security response during COVID-19. Basically, during COVID-19, food security program or Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So during COVID-19, basically the distribution of food or distribution of food grains under PDS system that had been widened up, that had been expanded. So India had done good in this. So India need to take lesson from India's food security response during COVID-19. Government measure to tackle food crisis during COVID-19 pandemic were effective. So it was effective, but still we need to learn lesson from it. Okay, how we can make it more effective, how we can reach to the targeted beneficiaries. So context of this article, that with the reduction in COVID-19 infections as the second wave had weakened in India, it is important to focus on the pandemic's disruptive impact on the food security and livelihoods of the poor and marginalized. So deadly virus has been around for 2 years and it is not clear as to how and when it will end. We are not aware of it. So we do have enough in terms of a hindsight analysis of policies and interventions that promise food and livelihood security, along with strengthening of health support for millions facing the wrath of pandemic. That is imperative to also note an alarming escalation in the global hunger that is unfolding right now. And there was a dramatic worsening of world hunger in 2020, much of it likely related to the fallout of COVID-19. So, pandemic's impact that has to be fully mapped as per the multi-agency report, that is the state of food security and nutrition in the world. That has estimated that somewhere around a tenth of the global population, up to 81.1 crore persons, had been found undernourished last year. We know the reason, because of COVID-19, because of migration of urban laborers to their home. So India has made enormous progress in the food production over the years, with an inspiring journey towards self-sufficiency in the food production that has been marked by Green Revolution. During 2020, India had produced over 30 crore tons of cereals, and it had built up a food stock of 10 crore tons. So country had registered record harvest over the last few years. India had exported a record of 1.98 crore tons of rice and wheat in financial year 2021. So coming to the impact of COVID-19 fallout, vulnerable and marginalized families in India had continued to be buffered against the food crisis by its robust targeted public distribution system. And key measures that had been initiated by the union government, that includes allowing the states to lift their allocations for 6 months in one go, in anticipation of a surge in demand for food grains through the public distribution system. So as per the data, there had been an unprecedented spike in the uptake of subsidized and free food grains during the lockdown. Public distribution system that became a lifeline for millions who had been hit by the pandemic. So during this time period, basically, because of COVID-19 fallout, it has impacted people, especially those people who are termed as vulnerable and marginalized section in India. So they have continued to be buffered against the food crisis because of robust targeted public distribution system, because of loopholes into it. So key measures that has been initiated by union government, that included that state had been allowed to lift their allocations for 6 months in one go, in the anticipation of surge in demand, because demand had been increased for food grains through public distribution system. So this measure had been taken by union government, that they have allowed state government to lift all such allocations. So according to the data, unprecedented spike in the uptake of subsidized food grains during lockdown had been seen. So public distribution system, basically it acted as a lifeline for those people, for those millions of people. So dynamic analysis of the food security scenario and feedback from different stakeholders had allowed Government of India to increase entitlements that had been allowed or given to National Food Security Act beneficiaries in 2020. So under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, 81.3 crore National Food Security Act beneficiaries had received additional 5 kgs of food grains per person per month, 1 kg of pulses per family per month, free of cost for 8 months from April to November 2020. So this is a fact for prelims, so you can have a note of it. So Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, basically it had allowed those beneficiaries under National Food Security Act to receive additional 5 kgs. Additional means what they had been allocated. Okay, what they had been allocated under TPDS, targeted public distribution system. So what had been allocated to them, on the par of it, beyond this allocation, additional 5 kg food grains per person per month had to be distributed, and this has been distributed. 1 kg of pulses per family, not per person but per family per month, free of cost for 8 months from April to November 2020. So from April to November 2020, this had been distributed for continuously 8 months. So under Atmanirbhar package, 8 crore migrants were provided 5 kg of food grains per month free of cost. Government, it means under TPDS, they had to pay some money. Hai na? Let's say 5 kg, let's say 3 rupees kg rice, 2 rupees wheat, something like that. It was like this. So after the, along with this, free 5 kg food grains had been distributed. So government also allowed NGOs or civil society organizations to purchase rice and wheat at subsidized price directly from nearby Food Corporation of India. warehouses. Rice that has been sold at rupees 22 per kg, market price was 35 rupees per kg. Wheat had been sold at 21 rupees per kg. It was subsidized rate, but market price was 27 rupees per kg last year. So Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana was introduced in 2020 for 8 months to provide relief to 80 crore beneficiaries who are being covered under National Food Security Act from COVID-19 induced economic hardships. So scheme was reintroduced this year for the third phase implementation for 2 months till June, and later it was extended till November under the fourth phase. So in different phases it has been implemented. So during the third phase of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, somewhere around 89% of the allocated food grains had been distributed to the beneficiaries, and distribution has reached 94% in the month of May. It was implemented for 8 months last year and for 7 months this year. So Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana outlay will add up to a total expenditure of more than 2 lakh crore over 15 months. So COVID-19 pandemic has once again drawn attention to addressing the aspects of access and portability of food entitlements. It has become critical to leave no one behind in times like these are crucial for states to find solutions so that no one goes hungry. It is ensuring that food support focuses on at-risk groups that includes persons with disabilities, elderly, single women-led houses, transgender persons, HIV affected persons, displaced persons, refugees, and orphan child is at the heart of leave no one behind. So these people, they should also be included in this. They should also be made beneficiary under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. So these people should also ensure food support. Okay, so scale of India's public food distribution system is immense. It has gone through constant navigation and improvement. That is commendable. But more needs to still to be done to improve access and inclusion among the missing vulnerable population. So basically, this is the only problem in our food security program, that those people, those targeted beneficiaries who are being excluded, and they are the real beneficiaries, basically. So they should include into it. So what is the way forward? So first is what? Introduction of One Nation, One Ration Card scheme is an innovation that can be a game changer. It will allow beneficiaries to access their food entitlements from anywhere in the country. What was the idea behind One Nation, One Ration Card? Presently, what is there? Every person, migrant laborers or anyone who are beneficiary under National Food Security Act, they are holding ration card according to their economic status. They can avail the benefits wherever they are staying. For example, if a Bihar migrant laborer is living in Mumbai and he is holding ration card of Mumbai, so he can avail the benefits of ration card or National Food Security Act in Mumbai only. But under One Nation, One Ration Card, and that happened during COVID-19, that those beneficiaries now they were not able to take the benefits of ration card in their home states. So that happened basically last year. So last year government came up with this One Nation, One Ration Card, and it has allowed that person who are holding ration card. It doesn't mean if migrant laborer who's holding Mumbai's ration card cannot take benefit of ration in Bihar. He can take benefit under One Nation, One Ration Card. So it will be universally, it will be acceptable. So this is especially important for a country like India with a massive mobile population and migration between states. Scheme takes the massive digitization of the supply chain, distribution and access to the next step, ensuring anyone benefits from anywhere in India. Secondly, climate change will continue to impact agriculture and food security. It will impact the lives of the people. For example, poor and vulnerable can be devastating. Massive efforts are required towards programs that is focusing on building resilient agriculture, which is adaptive to change weather needs through the introduction of newer varieties of crops, efficient irrigation system, promotion of such crops as per the agroclimatic zones. So these efforts are required, okay, to implement programs successfully. And these programs need to focus on the resilient or building resilient agriculture, which is adaptive to changing weather. It means weather change should not impact agricultural production. and introduction of newer variety of crops are required. Efficient irrigation system is required. Promotion of crops according to the agroclimatic zone is required. Then only we can think of, or we can expect good production. Thirdly, third of all the produced is wasted. uh, uh, there should be enhanced efforts to prevent losses. For example, lost or wasted energy used for food production accounts for about 10% of the world's total energy consumption, and annual greenhouse gas emission associated with food losses and food waste reaches to around 3.5 gigatons of the carbon dioxide equivalent. So finally, 2021 offers a unique opportunity for advancing food security and nutrition through transforming food systems with the upcoming UN Food System Summit, Nutrition for Growth Summit, and COP26 on climate change. Outcomes of these events will certainly shape the actions of the second half of UN decade on action on nutrition. India, which is playing a central role in this transformation and offering experiences and solutions to address the thought process and models for a resilient, equivalent, equitable, and food secure world. So India's work has been commendable, but still some way forward had been suggested, so that also all such people who are being excluded and they are real beneficiaries, that can be included into this food security program, and it can be made more efficient. So that is all about this article. So here you can note down all such way forward. These are very good points, and you can, in fact, this can be used in the essay as well if any question comes in essay section. Next, so can Sark fill the power vacuum left by US withdrawal from Afghanistan? Basically, if we talk about Sark, South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation. So Sark is basically India's neighboring state. The members of Sark nations, these are India's neighboring states: Pakistan, Afghanistan, then Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka. So these countries are members of Sark. But because of tensions between India and Pakistan, Sark summit had not been very much impactful, not been very much effective, and meetings, or you can say, regular meetings are not taking place. So because of this, its efficiency had been somewhere lacking. So here it is saying, it is talking about, or it is showing some pictures, showing some light whether Sark can fill the power vacuum which has been left out after US withdrawal from Afghanistan. So it is about potential of Sark. This article is talking about potential of Sark. So context is that South Asia is the world's most complex and closely watched region. Why it is most complex? Because if you see, smaller and bigger countries are there in Asia or South Asia. And these countries, basically, these are being highly disturbed because of colonial policies that had been in the past. Because of colonial government and colonial policies, these Asian countries who are neighboring countries, and their borders are very much complex. They keep on fighting, or you can say argumenting or fighting. For example, India, China, India, Pakistan, recently India, Nepal. So these border areas, or these countries of South Asia, they are very much complex in that term. So basically, Asia, this is a developing world. Okay, Asian continent is a developing world. So they need to unite if they really want to. Sorry. Yeah, so if Asian countries or Asian continent, if they really want to come on the par with Western countries, then they need to be united. Multilateral platforms that need to be promoted. Countries, they should come on the common platform. They should talk about all such problems. They should talk about and they should implement all such mechanisms, or all such safeguards they need to take. But the complexity in the South Asian country, this is a big problem. And this region had been said that it has been closely watched region by the Western world. So region is beset with unsettled territorial disputes like trans-border criminal subversive activities. It remains a theater of ethnic, cultural and religious tensions and rivalries. Current rise in ultra-nationalism is taking place against the backdrop of bloody history of repeated interstate wars and myriad interstate conflicts. Nuclear armed neighbors like India and Pakistan, they are at loggerheads. Cross-border terrorism has again made the region, as former US President Bill Clinton had once deemed it the world's most dangerous place. So because of these many reasons, this is complex one. And as once former US President Bill Clinton has said about Asia, that this is world's most dangerous place because of all such tensions. So basically, neighbors had become rivals of each other. This is very big problem in Asia. So US military withdrawal from Afghanistan has fueled fears of intensification of these trends. Because USA was there in Afghanistan, it was nearly closing or watching other South Asian countries. So it was a fear of a USA that none of Asian countries were going against or taking harsh step against each other. But after its withdrawal, these tensions will intensify. General Scott Miller, the longest serving US commander in Afghanistan, has warned that civil war is certainly a path that can be visualized if this continues on the trajectory it is on the right now. That should be a concern for the world. Afghanistan, that had been a venue for two great wars. The first, that has been seen in 1979 with Soviet forces invaded Afghanistan. In response to it, USA made unholy and uneasy alliance, and it started working with Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and others while backing Afghan mujahideens against Soviet. After Soviets' withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1988, USA quickly followed the suit. Vacuum facilitated the growth of religious fanaticism and emergence of Taliban that made Afghanistan a safe haven for Al-Qaeda terrorists. Then during early 21st century, Afghanistan became a staging ground for 9/11 terrorist attacks against America. And in 2001, US military went into Afghanistan to disrupt the terrorist base of operations and attack military capability of the Taliban regime. After 2 decades of US invasion, UN reports suggested that Taliban and Al-Qaeda remain closely aligned and they show no indication of breaking ties. So regionalism, that can be a confidence building measure to produce a common resolve to navigate common challenges. Then in 1985, during the height of Cold War, leaders of South Asian countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, they came up with a regional forum. They created a regional forum, and it was named as Sark, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So this has been established, and its goal was to contribute to mutual trust, understanding, and appreciation of one another problem, each other's problems. That was their goal. Okay. Then Afghanistan was admitted as a member in 2007. It was not initial member. It became member later on in 2007. So despite the framework, Sark provides for cooperation among South Asian nations. It has remained sidelined, dormant since its 18th summit of 2014 in Kathmandu. No alternative capable of bringing together South Asian countries for mutually beneficial diplomacy has emerged. Then third Sark summit that held in 1987 that adopted a regional convention on suppression of terrorism and updated it in 2004 with the signing of an additional protocol. So these instruments had demonstrated the collective commitment to rid the region of terror and promote regional peace, stability, and prosperity. Then, in the month of March last year, 2020, Indian Prime Minister seized COVID-19 crisis and utilized Sark seal to convene a video conference of Sark leaders. They underscored the need of cooperation on the regional basis for fighting the pandemic. If the proceedings had not taken place under Sark banner, leaders from the 8 countries would not have come together so readily on such short notice. Such capacity to bring member states together shows the potential power of Sark. So in the name of pandemic or fight against pandemic, at least they united. They attended the meeting at the short notice. So it is the potential. These member nations, they understood the potential of Sark, and it has shown the world. So as the largest regional cooperation organization, Sark's importance is stabilizing and effectively transforming the region is becoming increasingly self-evident. Allowing Sark to become dysfunctional and irrelevant greatly distorts our ability to address the realities and mounting challenges facing Sark nations. The failure of South Asian nations to act in accord will plunge South Asia into a perilous theater of discord and escalating tensions with jihadi militias at the forefront, placing the entire region in turmoil. Sark is needed as institutional scaffolding to allow for the diplomacy and coordination that is required between member states in order to adequately address the numerous threats and challenges in the region which it is facing. So it's been 30 years of Sark existence. Sark has developed a dense network of institutions, linkages, and mechanisms. During its beginning, India suspected it to be a way for smaller neighbors to gang up against it. Such concerns have proved to be unfounded. It means India suspected that small neighbors will gang up against India. So these concerns, basically, it was baseless. Sark has made significant contributions to the development of civil society and track to initiatives. So those Sark's charter prohibits bilateral issues at formal forums. Sark summits provide a unique informal window retreat for leaders to meet without aids and chart future courses of action. Coming together of leaders, even at the height of tensions in a region laden with congenital suspicions, misunderstandings, and hostility, is a significant strength of Sark that cannot be overlooked. Sark members, they are among the top troop contributing countries to UN peacekeeping missions. With the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, a joint peacekeeping force from Sark region under UN aegis could be explored to fill the power vacuum that would otherwise be filled by terrorist and extremist forces. Basically, it is saying that after the US will withdraw, then what will happen? Then Sark members, they can have their joint peacekeeping force. Okay, and they can install or they can have this joint peacekeeping force in Afghanistan under UN aegis, and they can explore to fill the power vacuum which is being left out by USA. And that would otherwise be filled by terrorist and extremist groups. So if it will not be done, then that power vacuum will be filled by extremist and terrorist groups in Afghanistan. So it is going to be very harmful for Asian countries. So if the geopolitical dynamics following World War II could allow die-hard enemies, France and Germany, to interface effectively enough to create the European Union, there is no reason why India and Pakistan cannot come together. Sark has the capacity to bring nations together. As Nelson Mandela has said once, if you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then he becomes your partner. So this is what Sark can do. All such member nations, most of them, they are not, or they are hostile basically from to each other, like India, Pakistan. So what they need to do, they need to come together, they need to work together, then they can be partner of each other. Just a moment. Yeah. So here it becomes very important to for Sark to come together and to deal with the situation which is going to be left out, unsorted, unanswered, or unsolved by USA. So that is all about this article. Now, next article is about evaluating India's options in Afghanistan. With the West done with Afghanistan, New Delhi needs to adopt a layered approach in finding a political solution. So here, this article is talking about India's options or India's way of action in Afghanistan, what India need to do. So context of this article is that it is not a coincidence that United States is exiting Afghanistan at the same time that focus of its foreign policy is shifting to East Asia. There is growing consensus in Washington, D.C. that US, instead of staying engaged in lost wars, which adds little value to American power, should now urgently prepare itself for the unfolding geopolitical contest with China. America's strategic response to China's rise is its Indo-Pacific strategy that seeks to build a bloc of Indian and Pacific Ocean democracies, which is aiming at containing China's rise and challenging its high-functioning single-party dictatorship. USA wants India to play a key role in this bloc, which, along with Australia and Japan, that make up so-called Quad grouping. So, at the same time, two things USA is doing. What are these two things? First, it is showing its interest in East Asia in the name of Quad to provide security in the Indo-Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean region, to have its own presence in Indo-Pacific Ocean. Now, this is the strategy of USA. And at the another side, at the same time, what it is doing, it is withdrawing from Afghanistan. So it is now focusing on the maritime, okay, marine ecosystem, or not ecosystem, but marine, or maritime security, coordination of all such member countries or all such like-minded countries. So there is one problem. What is that? India, unlike the other members, is the only continental Asian power in the Quad that shares contested land border with China, and it is vulnerable to the geopolitical changes in the Eurasian landmass. So India is member of Quad, but apart from except the three members, USA, Australia, and Japan, India is the only country which is sharing borders with China, and we know it has been discussed earlier as well that Quad, the idea behind Quad is what? That these countries wants to stop the exertion of China in Indo-Pacific Ocean. So here basically, this basically sharing border with China that makes India vulnerable. So USA may have retreated from Afghanistan as part of a grand strategy to take on China in maritime Asia, in which it needs India's involvement. India might find it tempting to join the ranks, especially after China's aggression on the line of actual control last year. But irony is that American withdrawal and vacuum it leaves in Afghanistan and continental Asia in general, that is being filled by China and Russia, and it will enforce India's identity as a continental Asian power. Barring a brief interregnum in 1990s, India has historically enjoyed good ties with Afghanistan that go back to the 1950 Treaty of Friendship. Indian interest and influence suffered when Taliban, backed by Pakistan, captured Kabul in 1996. But India was back in action as soon as Taliban were ousted from power after US invasion in 2001. It has made huge investments and commitments ever since, which run into over $3 billion and cultivated strong economic and defense ties with the Afghan government. Now, it is again staring at uncertainty with US and US pullback that is having effectively changed the balance of power in Afghanistan, and Taliban making rapid territorial gains over there. USA's strategic objective in Afghanistan that was limited. As US President Joe Biden has pointed out earlier this month, that killing Osama bin Laden and disrupting Al-Qaeda networks, that was the idea why, that was the reason why USA had been in Afghanistan. That has been said by US President Joe Biden. So defeating the Taliban and nation building that were part of the non-conservative ideological project which has been evidently failed. It means that USA, having met its realist objectives, that can abandon the Afghan government and exit the theater, which is what Mr. Biden is doing. But India cannot. It has to protect its investment. It has to prevent Afghanistan from becoming another safe haven for anti-India terrorist groups. And it also needs to check Pakistan deepening its influence in Kabul. So one option, as many commentators have already pointed out, is to hold talks with Taliban. India has already established contacts with Taliban in Doha. Talking to them would allow New Delhi to seek security guarantees from the insurgents in return for continued development assistance or other pledges, which India has already done during 1990s. India had backed anti-Taliban, Taliban Northern Alliance, as well as exploring the possibility of Taliban's autonomy from Pakistan. And at the same point, talking to Taliban looks inevitable, but India need to overlook the deep ties between Pakistan's security establishment and Haqqani network. That is a major faction within the Taliban that's driving the successful campaigns on the battlefield. So USA overlooked it while fighting the Taliban along with Pakistan, and it paid a very heavy price for it. There is no guarantee that India's quest for engagement with Taliban would produce a desirable outcome. So India should broad base its option while talking to Taliban to protect its interest. New Delhi should also enhance aid to Afghanistan's legitimate government and security forces and work with other regional powers for long-term stability in the country. So this is a desirable action what India need to perform. That India need to do need to continue what it used to do with the Afghan what's a legitimate government, security forces, and it need to involve with the other regional powers so that long-term stability can be provided in Afghanistan. Along with this, it need to involve in talk with Taliban so that guarantee should be given that Taliban would not go against India or any terrorist group will be formed against India or other Asian countries. So these are what desirable actions for India. Now, Taliban now control or contest most of Afghanistan's countryside. That is true. But still, it is not a foregone conclusion that they could take Kabul easily. Afghan military has some 2 lakh hardened soldiers, including the highly trained special forces. In the cities, which saw relative freedoms and rights compared to the dark period of Taliban regime, the government, despite its infighting, corruption, and incompetence, still commands support. And there is no Northern Alliance this time. So Taliban have already taken Northern districts, including Badakhshan and Takhar. The only force that is standing up to the Taliban is the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces. So here, India should deeply step up training Afghan forces, provide military hardware, intelligence, and logistical and financial support so that Kabul can continue to defend the cities. Basically, Taliban had captured few of the cities of Afghanistan, but Kabul, that is the biggest center or biggest city, which has left out. So here it is saying that India need to support Afghanistan forces, legitimate forces, so that they can be strong to face Taliban, and they can protect or defend the Kabul city. So New Delhi should also coordinate with other regional powers to support Afghan government, because if government forces crumble before Taliban, the prospect for a political settlement would be narrowed. So there is a convergence of interest between India and 3 key regional players, that is Russia, China, and Iran. Iran is sharing borders with Afghanistan. China is also sharing borders with Afghanistan because of CPEC. Basically, Pakistan is sharing border with China, but because this POK region, which Pakistan from where Pakistan is sharing its border, that had been given to China for CPEC corridor, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So indirectly, China is also a neighbor of Afghanistan, indirectly, not directly. Then Russia, we know Russia is also sharing its border. So these are those key regional players along with India who can show their interest, okay, in seeing a political settlement in Afghanistan. So these 3 countries, they have already opened public direct talks with Taliban. But these contacts are largely tactical in nature. For China, whose restive Xinjiang province shares a border with Afghanistan, a jihadist-oriented Taliban regime would not serve its internal interest. Russia, which fears that instability would spill over into the former Soviet republics, has already moved to secure its Central Asian perimeter. For the Shia theocratic Iran, a Sunni Deobandi Taliban with which it had almost gone to war in 1998, it will continue to remain an ideological, sectarian, and strategic challenge. None of these countries would like to see Taliban taking over Kabul militarily. That means there would be an isolated Sunni Islamist regime in a country that will fracture ethnic equations in Afghanistan. There would neither be legitimacy for a Taliban regime nor peace in Afghanistan. So India need to break this impasse. It should take a layered approach. Its immediate goal should be the safety and security of its personnel and investments in Afghanistan. So long-term goal should be finding a political solution to the crisis, and if a political solution is not achieved, it should seek non-conventional methods like what it did in the 1990s to offer support to its allies within Afghanistan and retain some influence. None of this can be achieved unless it works together with the regional powers. Russia has cultivated links with Taliban in recent years. So India would need Russia's support in any form of direct engagement with Taliban. Now, so when it comes to Afghanistan, Iran is an irreplicable irreplaceable country. It shares a long border with Afghanistan. It has built contacts through several stakeholders in the country, especially ethnic minorities over there. So original objective of India's Chabahar project in Iran, that was to create a direct access to Afghanistan bypassing China. This direct access is critical for India in all different scenarios that will move supplies to Kabul in larger quantities, retain its presence in the event of a civil war, or carry out covert operations if Taliban takes power by force. But India, under pressure from USA, slowed down on the Chabahar connectivity projects, which finally prompted Iran to drop India and go ahead. Building strategic ties with Iran, irrespective of USA's policy towards Islamic Republic, is essentially for India's Afghan bets. Finally, India should talk with China with the objective of finding a political settlement and lasting stability in Afghanistan. With this approach in India, striking the right balance between its continental realities and USA's pivot to maritime Asia. So USA and West in general are done with Afghanistan. And India, as one of the countries that would be impacted by the consequences of American withdrawal, has to work with Eurasian powers to protect its interest and stabilize Afghanistan. So this is what India need to do. That is all about this article. The next one, immigration bill that does not go far enough. The new bill is better than the Immigration Act 1983, but more reforms are required to protect Indian workers. So immigration bill, basically some amendments had been going on. Immigration bill amendment 2021 had been introduced, and we'll discuss about the details of it. So some reforms are required so that protection to Indian workers can be provided who are working outside. So context of this article, that during the month of June 2021, Ministry of External Affairs invited public inputs to the Immigration Bill 2021. So it was opened for the public to have their inputs, okay, to give their inputs. So bill could be introduced in Parliament soon and presents a long overdue opportunity to reform the recruitment process for nationals who are seeking employment abroad. So for the years, independent investigations into the migrant worker conditions have underlined serious exploitative practices that includes large recruitment charges, contract substitution, deception, retention of passports, non-payment of underpayment of wages, poor living conditions, discrimination, and other forms of ill treatment. So basically, these are those ill treatments which Indians faces. So investigations had to be taken place, or independent investigations for in the favor of those migrant worker conditions that have to be underlined, okay, against these serious exploitative practices. So during recent months, media reports have highlighted that how the majority of migrant worker deaths in the Arab Gulf states or West Asia had been attributed to heart attacks and respiratory failures, whose causes are unexplained and poorly understood. It means many of the Indians had been found dead, okay, dead. But in those West Asian countries and Gulf states, but it had been shown, or it had been presented as heart attacks or respiratory failures. But the real reason or real cause behind it, that had been poorly understood, or there's something fishy about these deaths. So labor migration is governed by Immigration Act 1983 that sets up a mechanism for hiring through government certified recruitment agencies, whether it is individual or public or private agencies. It outlines obligations for agents to conduct due diligence of prospective employers, sets up a cap on service fees, establishes a government review of worker travel and employment documents, which is known as immigration clearances, to 18 countries, mainly in West Asian states and Southeast Asian countries. Basically, West Asian states and Southeast Asian countries, there you will see immigrations or Indians who emigrates to these countries, they are basically uneducated, illiterate, or less educated people who go for the job, which is labor-intensive jobs. Okay, they go for labor-intensive jobs in the construction sites or petroleum, gas stations or petroleum stations. So these type of jobs they get. Basically, these workers they get money, okay, but somewhere they have to compromise with the lifestyle. They have to compromise. They have to live in very tardy condition, unhygienic condition. Sometimes it happens they do not find job immediately, then they have to suffer. Then another thing is that sometimes it happens they illegally they have to stay after ending of their work visas or work permits, or sometimes it also happens that they do not get their salaries or wages on time, or even unemployment also they faces. So these are those problems basically with the Indians. So basically under this immigration bill, it has been open for the public so that they can give their advice, they can give their inputs that can be included in the immigration bill. So here, basically, it is saying that those people, those agents who are government certified, so those agents can be individual, public, or private agencies. They basically outline some obligations for the agents. Okay, government outlines obligations for such agents so that they can conduct due diligence of prospective employers. It means those employers who are going to give jobs to Indians. Set up a cap on service fees. Whatever service fee has to be paid, there need to be a cap on it. It means there should be a limit on it. Establishes the government review of for worker travel. It means if workers had traveled to these countries, then proper review or government review need to be taken place. Employment documents. Okay, so review of employment documents should also be taking place. To 18 countries, okay, it means 18 countries of both the West Asian states and Southeast Asian countries. So Immigration Bill 2021 is an improvement over 1983 Act. It launched a new immigration policy division, establishes help desk and welfare committees, requires manpower agencies to conduct pre-departure briefings for migrants, increases accountability of brokers, other immediate intermediaries who are also involved in labor hiring. But bill does not go far enough. Why? The first thing is that 2021 bill's purpose, that is to consolidate and amend the law which is relating to immigration of citizens of India. It lacks a human rights framework which aimed at securing the rights of migrants and their families. Progressive labor regimes do so. Like, for example, in a country like Philippines, it is explicitly recognizes the contributions of Filipino workers and the dignity and fundamental human rights and freedoms of the Filipino citizens. So these basic rights need to be provided to those immigrant citizens. Okay. Then another significant drawback is that bill permits manpower agencies to charge workers service fees and even allows agents to set their own limits. So if agents will set their own limit, then they can set anything. Okay, there will be no uniform cap on service fee because agents are putting their own service fees. So government need to intervene into it. So international labor standards such as International Labor Organization, Private Employment Agencies Convention number 181, and International Labor Organization General Principles and Operational Guidelines for Fair Recruitment recognizes that it is employers, not workers, who should bear recruitment payments, including the cost of their visas, air travel, medical exams, service charges to recruiters. It means this is the duty of recruiters, not the employees. Okay. So large-scale surveys by International Labor Organization So, so as per the International Labor Convention, it has been said that all such fees, all such obligations that need to be fulfilled by the employers, not by the workers. So large-scale surveys by International Labor Organization and World Bank, it shows that Indian workers pay exorbitant charges for their jobs. That poor workers day, progressively larger fees they have to pay. Indians who are working in the Saudi Arabia, they have to pay somewhere around $1,507 on an average during as the recruitment charges. Their counterpart in Qatar, they pay $1,156. So this is very much. This is higher. So to some, recruitment charges might appear like a justified service fee, but the tens of thousands of rupees that workers pay far exceed the real cost of recruitment. When low-wage migrants pick up the tab, it makes them vulnerable to indebtedness and exploitation. So worker-paid recruitment fees that eat into their savings, force them to take high-interest loans, live on shoestring budgets, and in the worst cases of abuse, leave workers in situations of debt bondage. That is a form of forced labor. So basically, because of these high service charges, they have to face a lot monetarily. So perhaps the bill's most glaring inclusion is that it permits government authorities to punish workers by cancelling or suspending their passports and imposing fines of up to rupees 50,000 for violating any of the bill's provision. When enforced, it can be used as a tool to crack down on workers who migrate through unregistered brokers or via irregular arrangements like on tourist visa. Criminalizing the choices migrant workers make either because they are unaware of the law, under the influence of their recruiters, or simply desperate to find a decent job in deplorable. That runs contradictory to the purpose of protecting migrants and their families. And it also violates international human rights standards. So recruiters and public officials, they could misuse the law to instill fear among workers and they report or threaten to report them. Migrants in an irregular situation who fear that they could be fined or have their passports revoked are also less likely to make complaints or pursue remedies for abuse what they have faced. So this bill does not also adequately reflect the gender dimensions of labor migrations, where women have limited agencies in the recruitment as compared to their counterparts, and they are more likely to be employed in marginalized and informal sectors and or isolated occupations in which labor, physical, psychological, and sexual abuses are common to them. So bill also provides limited space for workers' representation or civil society engagement in the policy and welfare bodies that it sets up. It ensures so to ensure that labor recruitment works for the tens of thousands of Indian women and men who migrate outside our borders each year. Ministry of External Affairs must start at the top and draft a clear purpose which explicitly recognizes the contributions of Indian workers and unique challenges they face and uphold the dignity and human rights of migrants and their families. Then it must address the specific provisions that diverge from this purpose. So here, uh, was a gender dimension should also be included. Abuse against women should also be targeted or should also be included. So it has basically left out. Then another limitation that was about worker representation or civil society engagement in the policy and welfare bodies to be set up to provide them their rights. Then they have to ensure labor recruitment works for those millions of Indian men and women who are migrating outside the country every year. So clear draft or draft a clear purpose that recognize the contribution of Indian workers and unique challenges what they are facing. So it should clearly target these. Okay, the bill need to clearly target these that had to uphold the dignity of human rights of migrants and their family over there. Okay, so all such loopholes that also need to be included, that also need to be addressed in the immigration bill. That is all about this article. Next article. Assam-Mizoram border dispute and its root in two notifications that is dating to 1875 and 1993. Basically, if you see, historically, if we see, Assam, which was part of British India during British government, when Bengal had been partitioned, so after let's say the final partition, Bengal and Assam, basically Bengal had been partitioned into two eastern and western, west and east, and Assam, because it was having Muslim population, so it was made a single province later on. So Assam basically, it was a larger province, but later on after independence, on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of language and their own culture, 7 states had been carved out in the northeast India. And Assam and Mizoram, they are sharing border, and on the basis of which some border disputes are going on, basically. So it is not new, it is older, but recently it has been fueled up. So context of this article is that at least 5 Assam police personnel had been killed after old boundary dispute between Assam and Mizoram that had been exploded in violent clashes at the contested border point. So October last year, residents of Assam and Mizoram had been clashed twice in the space of the week over territory, in which at least 8 people had been injured and a few huts and small shops had been torched. Violence spotlights the long-lasting interstate boundary issues in Northeast, particularly between Assam and states that had been carved out of it. So residents of Lailapur village, which is in Assam's Sachar district, they clashed with the residents of localities which is near Warangate in Mizoram's Kolaship district. Days before this clash, similar violence had also been taking place on the border of Karimganj, which is in Assam, and Mamit, which is in the Mizoram. So on 9th of October, a farm hut and betel nut plantation belonging to 2 Mizoram residents had been set on fire. In such incident in Sachar, some people from Lailapur had pelted Mizoram police personnel and Mizoram residents with stones. In turn, Mizoram residents mobilized and went after them. That has been said by Deputy Commissioner of that place. So, according to an agreement between the government of Assam and Mizoram some years ago, status quo should be maintained in no man's land in the border area. So basically, border of Assam and Mizoram, there is some place which is regarded as no man's land, because it means that it doesn't belong to both these states. So government of both the states, they have said that status quo need to be maintained in the no man's land in border areas. So people from Lailapur, they broke out the status quo and they allegedly constructed some temporary huts over there. In return, people from Mizoram, they also side went and they set fire on them. Okay. Then on 9th October incident, according to Mizoram officials, they said that the land that claimed by Assam had been cultivated for a long time by residents of Mizoram. And Karimganj DC, District Collectorate, said that that although the contested land was historically cultivated by Mizoram residents, on paper it fell within the Singla Forest Reserve that is under Karimganj jurisdiction. So Mizoram borders Assam's Barak Valley, both are bordering with Bangladesh. And Mizoram civil society groups are blaming illegal Bangladeshis who are allegedly migrants from the Bangladesh on the Assam side. So in the northeastern complex boundary equation, that showdown between Assam and Mizoram residents are less frequent than they are between, which has been said that said by Assam and Nagaland residents. So boundary between present-day Assam and Mizoram, which is 165 kilometers today, that dates back to colonial era, when Mizoram used to be known as Lushai Hills, that is now a district of Assam. So Lushai Hills now, it has went to Assam. It is a district over there. So in the past, Mizoram name was Lushai Hills basically. So now it is part of Assam. So dispute stems from the notification of 1875 that differentiated that Lushai Hills from the plains of Sachar, and another of 1933 that demarcates a boundary line between Lushai Hills and Manipur. So Mizoram minister had told that Mizoram believes the boundary should be demarcated on the basis of 1875 notification that is derived from the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act of 1873. Mizo leaders, they have argued that in the past against a demarcation notified in 1933 because Mizo society was not consulted before this. And before incidents of Monday on July 26 and last October 9, 2020. The last time the boundary saw violence was in February 2018. So on this occasion, MZP, which is Student Union of Mizoram, they have built a wooden rest house in a forest ostensibly for the use by farmers. And Assam police and forest department officials, they had demolished it by saying that this was in Assam territory. So MZP members, they had then clashed with the Assam personnel who also thrashed a group of Mizoram journalists who had gone to cover the incident. So these basically these complexity both these states are facing, and these are those incidents basically they are facing, and the reason behind these this dispute is the notification of 1875 and 1933. So basically both the state Mizoram is saying that 1875 need to be implemented because as per the Bengal Eastern Frontier regulation, because it is demarcating boundary what's say beyond Lushai Hills, okay, between Assam and Mizoram. But as per 1933 notification, Lushai Hills had been made part of Assam, which used to be part of Mizoram earlier. So this is the only point on which both the states are fighting, and no man's land is being captured by Assam, which has been disputed by Mizoram. So this is the incident which is going on. Now, next article. Needed a more unified Asian voice for Afghanistan. Afghanistan's future will impact Central Asia and South Asia more than the distant global powers involved with it now. We have already discussed one article regarding Sark. Okay. And this is also talking about a unified Asian voice for Afghanistan is required at this point of time. So if Afghanistan's future is going to impact Central and South Asia with more than the distant global powers involved with it now. So context is that as USA and North Atlantic Treaty Organization and end their presence in Afghanistan and set off a churn in the neighborhood, Central Asia is emerging as a key player that the global troika of USA, Russia and China are turning to. Three meetings this month of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Contact Group on Afghanistan and Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defense Ministries in Tajikistan and Central and South Asia Conference on Regional Connectivity in Uzbekistan are turning the spotlight on the region's role in dealing with the situation in Afghanistan and how India could build on that. So, so what should be the role of or leading role of India in Afghanistan? So plainly, if we put events of past few years and decisions of Troika, it means what? All these countries, USA, Russia, and China, these are Troikas. So basically, these Troikas, they have kept India out of a leading role in Afghanistan, China, Russia, and USA. Since 2019, these three countries, USA, Russia, and China, they had met with Pakistan, Troika Plus, in order to discuss Afghanistan's future. One in which Taliban, with which New Delhi had no role, no ties, gains an important, if not controlling, role in Kabul. So the same powers that invaded Afghanistan post 9/11, that is USA, and declared Taliban leadership as United Nations Security Council designated terrorist, as now not only advocating talks with Taliban. It means USA had made its presence in Afghanistan after 9/11 attack. It had declared Taliban leadership as designated terrorist under United Nations Security Council, and now and now it is not only advocating talks with Taliban, it is entreating their Pakistani host of the past 2 decades to help and actively paving the way for Taliban's return to power. So India's effort to build on trade with Afghanistan, shore up developmental projects and increase educational and training opportunities for Afghan youth have been appreciated. But these cannot grow bigger because of number of factors. India's original hesitation in opening talks with Taliban, which even Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani had suggested, that has cut India out of current reconciliation process. At the end of any formal dialogue between India and Pakistan since 2016 and trade since 2019 have resulted in Pakistan blocking India's overland access to Afghanistan. So India's alternative route through Chahabahar, though operational, but cannot be viable or cost effective, also long as US sanctions on Iran are in place. So India's boycott on Chinese Belt and Road Initiative in 2017 and now tensions at line of actual control after Chinese aggression in 2020 that make another route to Afghanistan off limits. Meanwhile, USA has announced a new surprise formation of Quad on regional connectivity. Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, that does not include India, and US agencies for international development, that is USAID, is conducting trial runs of truck convoys from Tashkent to Karachi and back. So with so many doors slamming shut, the hope is that Central Asian window, with this stance that 5 Central Asian republics of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, these are some referred to, They will now open possibilities, but here there are some caveats. So to begin with this, it is clear that Tashkent, that is in Uzbekistan, that see the rise of Taliban in a different light from India. After a whirlwind round of negotiations in his own region since coming to power in 2016, where he mended relations and ended border disputes with each of the other Central Asian states, and outreaches to USA and China to shift the traditional tilt towards Moscow, Uzbekistan president has made purposeful moves to Afghanistan. In 2018, his government became one of the first countries to publicly invite a Taliban delegation from Doha, Qatar, to visit. While at the same time, he has promoted a number of ambitious trade and connectivity initiatives with Ashraf Ghani government. So, speaking at the Central and South Asia Conference in July, Uzbekistan president has spelled out his plans for a modern version of the ancient northern trade route, which is called as Uttar Path, which connecting the Indo-Gangetic plain with the southern territories of Eurasian continent through the historical cities of Takshila, Gandhar, and Termez. He spoke of the old Silk routes and once bound Central and South Asia together and called Afghanistan that is the key link in practical connectivity for them. Then, significantly, while he mentioned the salience of the Termez Mazari Sharif Kabul Peshawar Railroad, Trans Afghan Railroad, which will connect to China's BRI and International North South Transport Corridor via the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas as the key elements of the architecture of connectivity. So he did not mention the Chabahar route that India has espoused. So basically, this is all against India. India's efforts can be seen in Chabahar. In fact, INSTC as well. But it hasn't projected as India is being kept out of all such. So Uzbekistan, Pakistan memorandum of understanding on transit route, that is agreement between Uzbekistan and Pakistan on transit trade, that is AUPTT, that has also been signed the same day, which would give Uzbekistan access to Pakistani seaports of Gwadar and Karachi rather than Iranian airports. Iranian ports. So Uzbekistan's calculations and by extension those of its other Central Asian neighbors as threefold. The first is that prosperity of these landlocked countries can only flow from access through Afghanistan to the closest ocean, that is Indian Ocean. Secondly, that all transit through Afghanistan depends on guarantees of safe passage from Taliban, backed by groups mentors in Pakistan. Thirdly, each of these stands, that is TAN countries, they are now a part of China's BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. And they are tying their connectivity initiatives with Beijing's will bring the double promise of investment and some modicum of control over Pakistan. So given all such odds, India's room for maneuver with these five countries on Afghanistan appears limited but not without hope. To begin with, India and Central Asian states share common concerns about an Afghanistan overrun by Taliban and under Pakistan's thumb. The worries of battles at their borders, safe havens for jihadist terror groups inside Afghanistan, and the spillover of radicalism into their own countries. It is necessary for India to work with these countries and other neighbors and to shore up finances for the government in Kabul. Particularly, it will ensure that government structure does not collapse. And it is only a matter of time before COVID-19 fury, international economies tire of funding Afghanistan, as the last donors conference in Geneva had showed. As part of SCO regional anti-terrorist structure, India must also step up its engagement with Central Asian countries on fighting terror. While Narendra Modi government has made it clear it will not send Indian boots to the ground in Afghanistan and it can support Afghan National Defense and Security Forces where it needs it most. And in terms of air power, India's previous gift of a few helicopters is far from adequate gift commitments made as Afghanistan's first strategic partner 10 years ago. And there must be more that in New Delhi can support, especially in conjunction with other countries that depend on Soviet-made arms that will include helicopters and planes, weaponry, ammunition, and spare parts. Finally, South Asia must learn from Central Asia's recent example in knitting together this region more tightly, a task that can only be completed with better ties with India and Pakistan. India's furtive discussions with the Taliban leadership in Doha make little sense unless a less tactical and more strategic engagement with Pakistan is also envisaged. Then, more importantly, countries of Central Asia and South Asia that also need to find a more unified voice as they have in recent weeks. So Afghanistan's future will impact both the regions much more than it will the distant global powers that currently dominate the debate. Traveling to Kazakhstan in 2015, Prime Minister of India had spoke of why Silk Road that connected the two regions faded away. The end of Silk Road did not just come about from the rise of sea-based trade of the new European powers, he said. It also happened because of Central Asia was no longer a bridge between the regions, but the new fault line between great empires to the east, west, and south. So ensuring a similar rupture is not wrought in Afghanistan is essential, which today has potential to become the bridge or the biggest boulder between Central and South Asia. So basically, he emphasized upon the importance of Central Asian role in Afghanistan to bridge a gap between Central and South Asia. He had given historical examples as well, Silk Road example, and what's a shared culture, shared history example. Okay, so that it can what's a bring a support in the Afghanistan issue. So that is all about this article. Now, next article is about needed. An anti-trafficking law. Human trafficking is a crime in itself, but it is also the propeller of several other crimes. So this article basically it is talking about that human trafficking. We know that it is a crime, but along with this, human trafficking comes with other crimes as well. This is crimes against humanity. We'll talk about that. So context of this article is about a story of a girl who is 13 years old named Sita. She was trafficked. Her parents, they were working in the tea garden Assam for the meager wages. So she had been trafficked to a placement agency in New Delhi, and she had been brought for rupees 20,000 as a domestic worker by a couple. She had not paid a single rupee, which had been promised, and instead she had been re-trafficked. She had been raped, exploited by the employers and traffickers. So her father found the young girl had been trapped in a house in Delhi 3 years later, but she did not step out when he found her. She hid behind a wall and she cried and said, I cannot show my face to my father. I am impure now. I want to kill myself. So this is the reality of thousands of women and children from the poorest section of our society. No nation can call itself civilized if it tolerates the buying and selling of its daughter. So this is what a grave situation of those poor sections of the society who are part of our society, civil society where we are living. So, so here it is saying that a nation which we talk about that it is growing economically, it is doing well economically. So that cannot be growth. A nation cannot call itself civilized if it tolerates these buying and selling of daughters or human trafficking. So of what meaning is the wealth, power or progress of a nation if its children are traded as though in medieval slave trades at a lower price than cattle? There is no human rights there. So, if we talk about human trafficking bill, so Bachpan Bachao Andolan and various civil society groups have campaigned for decades for a strong law to end this menace of human trafficking. In 2017, Sita and thousands of survivors like her had been marched in Bharat Yatra alongside the students, governments, judiciary, multi-faith leaders, businesses, and civil society to demand for such a law. And there was a single demand that India must pass a comprehensive anti-trafficking legislation. The passionate chants of the brave hearts who survived trafficking still reverberate in the ears. बिकने को तैयार नहीं हम, लुटने को तैयार नहीं हम. We are not ready to be sold. We are not ready to be stolen. So, Government of India has proposed the Trafficking in Persons Prevention, Care and Rehabilitation Bill 2021, which is aiming to tackle all aspects of trafficking, which includes social and economic causes of the crime, punishment to traffickers, protection and rehabilitation of survivors. That is achievable if bill has necessary checks and balances against the potential misuse of powers by agencies, periodic reviews of the law, adequate allocation of resources for effective implementation. So government here must include these crucial provisions in the bill and facilitate its smooth passage in the current session of parliament. So COVID-19, basically it has further intensified the need of the law. Why? Because of COVID-19, poverty had increased, and because of poverty, many of the children had been abdicated and they had been abandoned, or in the worst case, poor person, poor people, poor families, they have sold their daughter, or they have sent their daughter as a home, what's it, um, domestic help. But in the name of domestic help, they had been illegally trafficked. There is no stance of it regarding them. So traffickers have taken advantage of the prolonged school closures and loss of family livelihood. Bachpan Bachao Andolan with government agencies have rescued almost 9,000 children from trafficking since the first lockdown. And in the comparison, about half this number of children were rescued during the same time period of 14 months preceding the pandemic. So gravity of the situation cannot be undermined. We will not recover from the effects of the pandemic without the wherewithal to address its human impact, which comes with this law and its associated budgets. Human trafficking is a crime in itself, but it is also the propeller of several other crimes. It creates a parallel black economy which fuels child labor, child marriage, prostitution, bonded labor, forced beggary, drug related crimes, corruption, terrorism, and other illicit businesses. So the architect of our constitution, they established the severity of the crime of trafficking by making it only the offense punishable under the Constitution of India itself, besides untouchability. A strong anti-trafficking law is the moral and constitutional responsibility of our elected leaders, and a necessary step towards nation building and economic progress is required. So it is non-negotiable for the realization of India that our constitution makers envisioned, our freedom fighters struggled for, our soldiers died for, and our children deserve for this. So India, which is stepping into its 75th year of independence, there can be no greater gift to India than the freedom of our children. Parliament should urgently pass a strong anti-trafficking law. So that is all about this article. Now, next, let's make room for the river. Flood in Europe are a wake-up call for us to adopt the Dutch mantra, live with water, build with nature. Basically, this article is related to disaster management regarding flood, recurrent flood in country, in the world as well. Reasons behind it, climate change, okay, and other reasons as well. So context of this article that there are no words in German language for the devastation. It is the surreal, airy situation. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said when she visited regions in Germany which had been hardest hit by the floods that had been occurred as a result of heavy rains between July 12 and 15. So flood situation if we see in India and Europe. So months rain poured in just 24 hours in the worst affected areas of Germany and Belgium. That has caused multiple rivers to burst into banks, flood parts of the two countries as well as Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland. That was believed that these areas of Europe had not witnessed such heavy rainfall for more than a century. And the flood has shown that climate change spares none. Even if a country has adequate resources and advanced infrastructure like physically and organizational structures, it can find no escape from extreme climatic events. So report has said that the death toll in Germany and Belgium had crossed 214. Hundreds more are unaccounted for, and authorities are still struggling to restore normalcy. A shocked flood victim told a reporter that he thought such disaster happened only in Asia. Heavy rainfall within a short period of time resulted in overflowing rivers, canals, and other water bodies that flooding many towns and cities. Scenes of roads being washed away, houses getting inundated, and stranded people being evacuated by helicopters, earth movers, and lifeboats that were no different from what is normally witnessed in India during such disasters. It bore uncanny resemblance to what Kerala had experienced in August 2018. Not surprisingly, Kerala Chief Minister then reacted to the situation in Europe. He expressed condolence and asked the Indian community in Europe to stand in solidarity with the flood victims. He had also recalled with gratitude the technical assistance extended by the Netherlands to the state following the 2018 floods and visit of Dutch King and Queen to Kerala in 2019, when they personally reviewed the joint efforts underway of long-term flood resilience. So superior organization, better preparedness, and an advanced flood management system helped Netherlands with its century of experience in dealing with floods to avoid casualties, but many towns had been submerged. Thousands of people, they had been evacuated. Flood waters had breached a dike and entered the town of Meersing. Dutch military managed to close the breach using hundreds of sandbags. So, um, Angela Merkel, so according to her, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte and other leaders, they were quick to attribute the cause of flood to climate change and call for urgent action to arrest global warming. So experts say that more than carbon dioxide the world emits into the atmosphere, the warmer will be the air temperature. Warmer air holds more moisture and result in excess rainfall, which leads to flooding. Additionally, increasing temperatures at the poles result in slower movement of storms in the mid latitudes. And as a result of this, storm linger longer at a specific place. So combination of slow moving storm and presence of surplus moisture in the atmosphere results in intense rainfall in one location within a short period of time. In 2018, Kerala, for example, it has witnessed 414 rainfall in just 3 days between August 15 and 17. And rainfall for a period of August 1 to 9, 2018 in Kerala, it was 164% more than the normal one. So several had asked, what did Netherlands do right in dealing with the flood and what did the others do wrong? So the advanced flood warning system of Germany that includes a network of sensors to measure river water levels in real time did forecast heavy rains and possibility of floods. But local authorities, they were unable to respond rapidly enough and communicate the warnings to the wider population. So the rain and flood happened so fast that there was no time to evacuate all the residents to safely and fully deploy the formidable rescue and relief infrastructure that they possessed. There are already demands that such warnings must be communicated to the general public in simple language. Rather than forecast the millimeters of rain expected, conveying specific information regarding the extent of damage to property and life would likely encourage affected communities to remain alert and respond quickly. So, what lessons India need to learn? So, floods in Europe call attention to global need for countries to implement ecologically sensitive flood protection measures. Dutch had gone beyond their conventional dependence on dikes, dams, walls, and gates to protect themselves from the floods. Their current disaster resilience mantra is to live with water, build with nature, and make room for the river. They champion creating adequate space for rivers to overflow by protecting floodplains from human interference, deepening riverbeds, and creating alternate channels for excess water. After two major floods in 1993 and 1995, Dutch embarked on several projects to widen river banks and reshape the areas around rivers. So floods in Europe serve as a wake-up call to us in India to adopt pragmatic policies and practices that are nature friendly. We need to recognize that we will have to learn to live with water in the long term. Flood-prone areas, they need to be identified and projects initiated on an urgent basis to create room for rivers. Low-risk areas like playgrounds, maidans, or agriculture fields should be earmarked to store excess rainwater. Drains must be built for diverting water into these storage units. This will relieve the stress on the existing drainage infrastructure. Stored water can later be discharged back into the drainage channels once the higher water subsides. United Nations Development Programme, World Bank, European Union Post-Disaster Needs Assessment Report prepared for Kerala after 2018 floods that has pointed out that drainage capacity of the rivers and canals of the state must be increased by creating more room for the water to flow. So it has called for removing obstructions and encroachments from existing water channels, the proper maintenance of such channels, and creating additional channels for water to flow. So in the short term, what disaster readiness and preparedness need to be done? So strengthening disaster readiness, planning and preparation will help everyone to deal with these sudden, intense rain and consequent floods. Climate change and global warming will continue to cause extreme climatic events. Across the world, countries are being confronted with situations of either too little or too much water and droughts interspersed with floods. Rainfall has become unpredictable. While national and state disaster management authorities have grown in experience, competence, and professionalism, there is need for a higher degree of coordination and preparation across all levels of government. Practice drills need to be conducted in flood-prone areas. We need to test the effectiveness of flood warnings. Warnings should be in local languages and in simple terms so that people can understand this. And they can help the authorities to evacuate in time. Today, many are wondering how they can learn from the Dutch experience in preparing for flood and dealing with their aftermath. But Dutch themselves are wisely not permitting themselves any complacence. Conscious of their vulnerability to water, they maintain a spirit of eternal vigilance to floods. That reflecting this approach, the Dutch Prime Minister has exhorted his countrymen to learn from the recent disaster and see what more can be done rather than they say satisfied that major damage and loss of lives had been prevented. So this is all about this article. The next one. Judgment that must be taken in the right spirit. The striking down of 97th Amendment is a reminder that power to regulate cooperatives must stay with the states. This is regarding 97th Amendment Act. Recently, Ministry of Cooperation had been newly made, constructed, and all such functions regarding cooperative societies, which is our fundamental right, which is our constitutional rights. A new chapter has been added in the constitution regarding its role and membership, regulation, maintenance. So everything. So everything has been mentioned in the constitution as per the amendment of 97th Amendment Act. But recently, Ministry of Cooperation has created. It means a union ministry or let's say cabinet ministry will look after the functions of cooperative societies. Okay, so it will put a cap on the functioning of the cooperative society. So this article basically it is talking about that striking down of 97th Amendment Act. That is a reminder that power to regulate cooperatives must stay with the states. It means this is the cooperative society is part of the state list. That is why it has been mentioned in the new chapter, and states had been given responsibilities regarding cooperative societies. So context of this article is that constitutional amendment is a rare event. So rarely this constitutional amendment takes place. And there had been only 104 such cases of those in 71 years since the constitution came into being. Rarer still is when court strikes down a constitutional amendment. It means that rarely constitutional amendment takes place. And rarely happened that constitutional amendment had been struck down by judiciary, an event which has occurred only 7 times before last week. But such a moment has come to pass once again as Union of India versus Rajendra Nath Shah, a judgment delivered by Supreme Court of India on 20th July 2021. The 97th Constitutional Amendment Act was struck down, albeit in a limited manner. What is that? 97th Constitutional Amendment Act that came into effect from 15th February 2012. It has brought about many changes to the legal regime of cooperative societies. The amendment had added cooperative societies to the protected forms of associations under Article 19, Clause 1, Clause C, that elevating it to a fundamental right. And it has also inserted one chapter which is known as Part 9B in the Constitution that laid down the terms by which cooperative societies would be governed in the more granular detail that was pledgeable. Constitution can be amended only by the procedure provided in Article 368. So amendment procedure that requires majority of total strength of each of the houses of parliament and 2/3 majority of those are present and voting. So provision to this article list out some articles and chapters of the Constitution that can be amended only by a special procedure. Special procedure which require that amendment will also have to be ratified by the legislature of half of the states. And it is precisely on the grounds of violation of this additional requirement that 97th Constitutional Amendment Act had been challenged. And it is important to locate this amendment in context. The idea that cooperative sector ought to be controlled by at the state level and not at the central level or union level goes back all the way to the Government of India Act 1919 that had placed cooperatives in the provincial list during Government of India 1919. And this scheme had carried forward into Constitution with entry number 32 of the state list in the 7th schedule of the Constitution that conferred power to the state legislature to make law that pertain to incorporation, regulation, and winding up of these cooperative societies. But union government that has been acquiring incrementally greater control on cooperative societies over the years. Cooperative banks that has been brought under the purview of Reserve Bank of India. Political intent of the union government for more active involvement in the cooperative sector is also apparent from the recently established Union Ministry for Cooperation. Statement of objects and reasons of the amendment bill, which resulted in the amendment in question, that cites the need for greater independence and transparency in the functioning of the cooperatives and inserted a number of provisions which provided for the regulation of cooperative societies. Gujarat High Court has struck down the amendment in 2013 on the grounds that it had failed to comply with the requirements of Article 368, Clause 2 by virtue of not having been ratified by the states, and had also given an additional finding that 97th Amendment violated the basic structure of the Constitution. What is the meaning of this? That after the amendment, this had to be ratified by at least 50% of the states. Okay, by half of the states. Okay, so if this has been surpassed, it means it had gone against the federal structure. Federal structure or federalism, that is part of the basic structure. So it has violated federalism, that is one of the basic structure of the Constitution. So Union government challenged the Gujarat High Court judgment before the Supreme Court and argued that amendment neither directly nor effectively changed the scheme of distribution of powers between the center and the states. Parties which had challenged the amendment in the High Court had argued that Part 9b had been inserted by 97th Amendment, impinged upon the legislative power of the states by casting mandatory obligations upon the state legislature to legislate in a particular way in the areas in which they ought to have had freedom. Some clauses of newly inserted part of the Constitution would also override some existing state legislations. The court took the example of 73rd and 74th amendments, which introduced the chapters on panchayats and municipalities respectively. And those amendments similar in the impact on the legislative powers of the states and that had been passed by the special procedure involved ratification by the state legislatures. So court noted that procedure which has been followed in this case, but clarified that judgment is confined to the procedural lacuna and does not go into the question of the amendment that is being violative of the basic structure of the Constitution. So they have found that this lapse in procedure judgment has made a distinction between cooperative societies operating in one state and multi-state cooperative societies, which holds that while a ratification by half of the state legislatures would have been necessarily insofar as it is applying to the cooperative societies in one state. And they chose not to go deeper into the question of whether the amendment also required ratification in respect of application to multi-state cooperative societies. So minority opinion considered that the provisions of the newly added part that pertains to the multi-state cooperative societies could not exist independently of the parts that pertain to cooperative societies, and hence the whole amendment should be struck down. So this now brings us to the question that can government get over this decision? And in theory, it would seem simple enough. Amendment had only been struck down on the account of right procedure not having been followed, and another amendment can be brought, but this time going through the rigor of ratification by state legislature. So NDA has a majority in 18 out of 28 state legislatures. Amendment which has now been struck down was an amendment of UPA era. So it is not clear as to whether there will be any significant political opposition to the amendment if it is brought again. So cooperative sector that has always been in the domain of state or provinces. Organizing principles and mechanism of these cooperatives differ from area to area and depend on the industry or crop which forms the fulcrum of the cooperative. Homogeneity in this area would only result in the creation of round holes in which square pegs no longer fit. They also would not really serve to break the control some potential interests have taken over cooperatives, and that will be best if government takes this judgment in the right spirit and stays away from the further meddling in the cooperative sector, notwithstanding the creation of the new ministry. It means new ministry is not required. They needed to amend 97th Amendment Act. Okay, what changes had been brought under 97th Amendment Act, that needed to be amended. Okay, and as government is ruling in 18 out of 28 states, so there would have clear majority on this provision, on the new changes. So they should have done that despite of creation of new ministry. That is all about this article. So next article is about shared values. India and USA have a lot in common, but it is the differences that need attention. So here this article is talking about the commonality which India and USA is having. But apart from these commonalities, there are some differences on which both the countries need to work upon. So context is that US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's day visit to Delhi this week had heavily on discussions and understandably light on deliverables. Basically, this is the third time when we are seeing that under new government, any authority had come to visit India. So he had come and some discussions had been taken place. So the visit, the third by senior US official of Biden administration, was meant to prepare the way for more substantive meetings in Washington later this year. That include USA India 2+2 of foreign and defense ministries, Quad summit of its leaders, and bilateral meeting between Prime Minister of India and USA. So public statement by Mr. Blinken and External Affairs Minister of India and readouts had indicated that most of their conversations are focusing on Quad cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, Afghanistan, and in discussing the state of democracy and rights. So on Quad, they showed full convergence. On Afghanistan, External Affairs Minister has said that there were more convergences than divergences on the common positions that there is no military solution to conflict and that neither country would recognize a Taliban regime that takes Kabul by force. However, the divergences are more troubling for India, given that the fallout of US withdrawal will mean a less secure region for India. So USA continues to engage the Taliban in talks for a power sharing arrangement, despite the Taliban leadership's refusal to enforce a ceasefire and stop attacks against civilians in areas they are taking over. So militia is also trying to squeeze trade and financial supply chains to the Afghanistan government. Perhaps the greatest worry for India is USA's refusal to hold Pakistan to account for having given shelter to Taliban, and this will only embolden Islamabad if Taliban advance in Afghanistan. So New Delhi tiptoed around USA's announcement of new Quad with Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan on connectivity, but this is another cause for worry for India. So on the subject of democratic freedoms, both these sides are maintaining their shared values. But Mr. Blinken began his meeting with the civil society roundtable, wherein internal Indian issues like minority rights, religious freedoms, and curbs on media and dissent had been discussed. That made it clear that these were important areas for the Democrat administration. In his rebuttal to a question about the backslide in India's democracy, Mr. Jaishankar, who is External Affairs Minister of India, had a three-pronged response, reiterating that the same standards apply to the US and India, that policies that have come in for the international criticism like Citizenship Amendment Act, Article 370 Amendment, and anti-conversion laws that had been part of Modi government's attempt to right historical wrongs, and that freedoms cannot be equated with lack of governance. Despite this, the attempt from both the sides to paper over the cracks, and this is an issue that they will grapple with it within the future, even as they will build upon the strong, comprehensive global strategic partnership that world's oldest and most populous democracies continue to share. So there are some differences. There are some shared values that both the countries need to work upon. Shared values, these are goods, but those differences both the countries need to, or India need to basically sort it out. If if it really want to work together with USA. So that is all about this article. Next article is about why opposition holding parliament hostage to political grandstanding denies people their rights. Basically, this article is in the context of the current session of parliament where opposition, basically they have united against the ruling party and they are striking the ways of ruling party and they are basically what they are doing, they are stumbling or they are being a stumbling block in the passage of any bill or passage of any transaction in parliament. So this is against democratic principles. Basically in this article it has been discussed. So context of this article is that while entering the 75th year of independence, a question worth pondering over is whether our judiciary, executive and Parliament have really discharged their constitutional duties well. Parliament is the most crucial instrument of representative democracy, and both the role as well as contribution of Parliament need a closer look. Going by all that is happening, or rather not happening, in both the houses currently, one can infer that Parliament is being politicized to the hilt, preventing it from performing its duties. So even in the second week of the ongoing monsoon session, Parliament continues to be stalled. Despite the fact that opposition has demanded a special sessions to discuss about COVID-19 situation, government had showed the willingness to discuss all the issues from Pegasus to pandemic as desired by the opposition. But ruckus continued to rule the roost. Sadly, most opposition parties seem to have converted Parliament into a plug and play instrument to achieve their partisan ends. Undoubtedly, even a single day lost in the din cost the nation heavily. But more important than the financial losses in the democratic polity is loss of popular aspirations. Democracy is also about redressing grievances, cultivating policies, and floating new ideas. All this happens only when Parliament functions. But in the ongoing lockdown of Parliament, dozens of MPs from both the houses, they want to raise issues during zero hour, lost their chance to speak and give voice to the agonies and aspirations of the people they represent. For no faults of theirs, many MPs had to forego their chance of making observations and giving suggestions while discussing a bill. This had been frustrating not just for the parliament members, but more importantly for the voters who had elected these people. Democracy is all about deliberations, debates, and discussions. And the moment all these are pushed to the periphery, the damage to democracy becomes irreparable. So the sense of helplessness gripping the minds of all rule-abiding MP boards ill for the health of the democracy. Firstly, it is only theoretically correct to say that Treasury alone is responsible for the smooth functioning of the House. In a situation where a group of just 10 to 20 members can easily hold the functioning of the House to ransom, it becomes collective responsibility of all the groups. Again, when it comes to the allotment of time to various groups who are participating in a debate, can't we make a clear distinction between those who are creating ruckus and those tolerating the same helplessly? Unless our parliamentary procedures have some deterrents as well as incentives embedded in them, ruckus mongering can't be prevented effectively. Rule of law also means ensuring the complete rejection of the do or wrong and get away with it phenomenon. Again, when groups and parties who are indulging in the policies of pandemonium, the travesty of justice becomes more pronounced, and as it is not the troublemakers, but those respecting rules and regulations who are punished, and that too are their civility. So some out-of-the-box solutions could perhaps show the way. With the government rightly averse to the idea of passing bills in the den, two things becomes easy prey. These are 0 hour and question hour. On an average, these 2 hour window provides an opportunity for at least 35 to 40 MPs to make a point, raise an issue, or seek some more information every day. When both these hours are washed out, as many MPs are deprived of their rightful opportunity and injustice is done to their electors. All this can be at least partly prevented if the presiding officers go for an out-of-the-box solution by conducting both 0 and question hour in camera within their chambers with relevant MPs and ministries mandatorily present. So in addition to this, the ending of parliamentary dysfunctionality also calls for further incentivizing the smooth functioning of both the houses. Unless this is done, the fears voiced in a research report by Vidhi Center for Legal Policy for a few years ago, that may come true. The report has talked about transformed parliament as its nature has changed from being the apex legislative body in India to a forum for grandstanding on matters of public importance. Disruptions are an effective method of such grandstanding. So now parliament is transforming like these. So any discussion about parliamentary deadlock features an element of whereaboutry, digging into the past and claiming that practices of the bygone era are relevant, even today is refusing to accept the demands of changing times. Ruckus, pandemonium, and unending deadlock cause delays in the lawmaking, and at times it deprives the process of an element of essential quality control. This adds to the damage already done to the democracy as a whole. as restive young population that want to make a difference, and the dynamics of a changing world demand early and effective delivery from democratic governance. As it unmindful to this, those stalling parliament are preventing democracy from delivering, and civility is being crucified, something which just cannot be defended. So this is all about the article. So all such articles, these were in the news, these were in the newspaper, in the Hindu and Indian Express. I have taken up those articles for the discussion. These are having some edge to come in the examination, in the upcoming examination, whether in the prelims and mains. Lots of points are there which may be asked in the prelims paper, which may be asked in the mains paper. In fact, you can frame out your answers in the essay paper as well, about parliamentary democracy, about peace talks which is going on between India and Afghanistan, and India's role into it, border issues. Lots of things have been discussed today. So that is all about the day. I hope it was helpful for you. So thank you so much. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. Study hard. Till then, bye-bye.